let's go ahead and get started with some questions that came in about this idea of testing. And two of them actually were really similar. So I'm going to read them both together and then kind of answer them at the same time. So the first one reads, Dear Sarah, how do I best prepare my students for tests without overwhelming them? Sincerely, prepare without anxiety. The second one, which is similar, Dear Sarah, how do I not kill the love of reading and writing through test prep? Sincerely, preserve the love of language. So both of these, I think, are such important questions to be asking, because these are kind of about the before, right? So we're going to take a look at, what do we do in terms of test prep before kids take the test, then we'll talk about during, and then we'll talk about after. So when we think about what they might be doing before this, first of all, I think we have to, especially with our younger children, we have to use analogies they can understand. We have to help them not be afraid of the exams. So this is like a ball game. This is like, right? When we use phrases like this is like, I think it really helps kids to understand that they have an experience like this already, and that can really help to lower the anxiety. I also think when it comes to test prep, there is a difference between teaching to a test and then really focusing on the kids in a way that gives them lots of experiences and lets them think about their learning in different ways. So when we think about it this way, there is a resource I want to share with you. There's this book that I just love. It's called How We Learn by Benedict Carey. And in it, he talks about this really amazing concept that's probably going to sound pretty intuitive to a lot of us, but I love that he names it. It's called interleaving. And the essential idea behind interleaving is that if you practice the way that you are going to be assessed, in the way that you are going to be assessed over and over and over again, you might quickly get better, but in the long run, you will plateau really early and you won't be as successful as if you had practiced in a lot of different ways. So let me just kind of try to quickly summarize one of the examples he gives. He kind of talks about these kids who do this beanbag toss, essentially. And the researchers are trying to figure out what would happen if we have this group that practices the beanbag toss exactly the way that they are going to be assessed. And then let's have this other group that practices from 3 feet away from the target and 4 feet away from the target. Then when they actually get assessed, they're assessed from 3 feet away from the target. And there are other kind of interceptions that the researchers do to get the kids who are, looking at this target from lots of different perspectives, different angles, things like that. What happens, which I'm sure you can anticipate, is that the group of kids that practiced throwing the beanbag from all of these different positions and with these different interceptions far outperformed the ones who only practiced the way that they were going to be assessed. I think this is so important for us because a lot of times out of our own fear and maybe out of pressure, we think that the best way to prepare kids is to give them example of the test, example of the test, example of the test. The problem with that is if that's all they've learned, then they're only learning how to take that exam. They're not really learning the underlying skills. And that's what's so important, right? That we want to be able to teach kids to transfer. And as you know, transfer is that outward expression of learning. When we assess kids, what we really want to assess is their ability to transfer from one scenario to another. So that means test prep is actually test practice, right? And we want kids to practice in all of these different ways, so that they get comfortable with the unpredictable, so that they understand when they see a question like this, that they're able to confront it with confidence in a lot of different ways. I wanted to share just a quote or two from How We Learn, because I think he summarizes this really beautifully, especially when he talks about practice. Carrie says, it's not that repetitive practice is bad. We all need a certain amount of it to become familiar with any new skill or material. But repetition creates a powerful illusion. Skills improve quickly and then plateau. By contrast, varied practice produces a slower apparent rate of improvement in each single practice session, but a greater accumulation of skill and learning over time. In the long term, repeated practice on one skill slows us down. So it's another way of saying you have to go slow to go fast. And this is sometimes what we know is true as teachers, but that we don't always react on it. So I think this is important in terms of thinking how we practice, right? Another way that we can combat this, let's not let them lose the love of what this is all about to begin with, is I think by taking away the illusion of what we're asking them to do. So for example, when we are asking them to read in a certain way for a test, a standardized assessment, something like that, we just should tell them, this is how you read in order to do this particular exercise. But this is not how you read on Sunday afternoon. And this is not how you read in order to become passionate about something, because when readers are passionate, sometimes they go really, really slow. And sometimes they stop and they call somebody and they talk about it. Or they stop and they get online and they research really quickly. Like, those are the things, those are the habits of real reading. And sometimes we have to apply those real reading habits to these very unique scenarios, which is exactly what this is, right? The test taking is one of those really unique scenarios. I remember when I started teaching AP, I taught AP for about 11 years. Actually, I haven't taught it for a few years now. And I was so nervous the first time my kids were going to take this exam. And so we did lots of practice exams. We did lots of multiple choice practices, lots and lots of this test prep. And so I thought, the best way for me to help my kids do well on this is actually to go score the things. So I went and scored them, went for a week, read the, 2,000 or 3,000 essays that you do over the course of the week. And this is what I learned. I learned that the very best essays didn't follow any formulas. What I learned was that the kids who were doing well were the kids who clearly were readers and writers and thinkers. So when I changed the way I approached teaching that class, I was able to really liberate all of us and say, hey, we are going to be really good readers, really good writers, really good thinkers, and when it gets close to the time, we are going to be able then to take these skills and apply them to this exam. And it really allowed us to do all kinds of things in this class that you wouldn't normally see, and they did well on the exam too.